And right now at News 4 at 6, it isn't over until every ballot is counted. That's the message tonight from Nate McMurray, why he says he's not conceding yet, and what the campaign for Congressman Chris Collins is saying about the stats tonight.
And we're going to be heading into some cooler temperatures through the finish of the week. Yes, that will include some snowflakes along with some rain. We'll have the latest on all that coming up.
And a scary situation at Lockport High. The entire campus was evacuated after a bomb threat against the school. Hear what authorities are saying about the search for a suspect.
Live in high definition, this is Western New York's news leader. Now, News 4 at 6.
It is way too early to think this is over.
Last night's results were close, but they were decisive.
Well, it's not over yet. The battle for the 27th Congressional District rages on one day after Election Day. After appearing to concede defeat, Democrat Nate McMurray says not so fast. Right now, he's trailing incumbent Congressman Chris Collins by a few thousand votes.
But with thousands of absentee ballots to be counted, McMurray says it's too early to call it. News 4's Chris Hervaditz breaks down the race for us. Chris?
Hi, Jackie. Just hours after saying it looked like he was coming up short last night, McMurray called for a recount in the early morning hours today. And at a press conference just a couple of hours ago, he said he misspoke, that he doesn't want a recount. He just wants all of the votes to be counted. This hasn't happened yet. By our count, there are still between 10 and 11,000 absentee votes yet to be counted. More absentee ballots are still coming in to the 8 county boards of elections in the 27th district. Remember, Collins' lead is about 3,000. And this afternoon, both campaigns held a press conference with McMurray saying in his that it's too early to declare this over yet. Collins, in his campaign press conference, did not speak, but his campaign advisor told me what the team thought when McMurray called for that recount around 1 this morning.
We saw a very desperate campaign, a very sad campaign that, frankly, could never quite live up to its own hype. And we've seen this kind of manic behavior before from Mr. McMurray, where he goes and does one thing and then very quickly, changes and does another thing.
As this information continues to flow into us, we need to respond. And our response is, we are going to fight for every single vote. We're going to fight for those who have not been heard.
The 8 boards of elections have leeway over when those absentees get counted in their county. In Erie County, where about 40% of registered voters in this district reside, they will begin counting on Monday the 19th. So even though Collins continues to claim victory and McMurray says he will not concede, it will be at least a couple of weeks until all of the uncounted votes are actually counted. Chris Hervaditz, News 4.
Thank you, Chris. If you want to see all our election night coverage and the numbers from each race, head to our News 4 app or our website, WIVB.com.
In national news tonight, Attorney General Jeff Sessions has been let go from the Trump administration. In his resignation letter to the White House, Sessions says he was asked to step down. President Trump says Matthew Whitaker will take over as acting Attorney General. Whitaker was chief of staff to Sessions at the Justice Department. The president posted a tweet today saying a permanent replacement will be named at a later date. Well, back here, police spent hours today combing through the halls of Lockport High School with bomb-sniffing dogs.
The school was evacuated this morning after a threat came in through an anonymous tip line. News 4's George Rickert reports.
Just before 8:45 a.m., Lockport City school officials discovered an anonymous digital threat claiming that some kind of devices had been placed in Lockport High School.
And Mrs. Wilkie, our principal, came over the announcements, and you could hear in the tone of her voice, she was very almost upset sounding. She was like, "Sorry to inform you, but we're going to have to evacuate."
The buses responded very quickly, and we were able to evacuate the building in a very good time.
Within 30 minutes, parents of more than 1,000 students received a global notification about the sudden dismissal.
I instantly called my daughter, who's a senior, and you could hear organized confusion in the background, and people or teachers saying, you need to get out, you need to go, everybody keep going now.
After hours of searching, nearly a dozen bomb-sniffing dogs found no trace of any explosive. Now the search turns to finding the person who made this threat. Earlier this year, 3 teens were charged with making threats at North Tonawanda High School. Up until last month, a 16-year-old could be charged as an adult for making threats like this. Now the age is 17. Next year, it'll rise to 18.
This is, right now, it's falsely reporting an incident. Depending on what, in fact, we do find, and the age or ages of the suspect could determine how we're going to charge or how we're going to go forward.
George Rickard, News 4.
A group of concerned citizens took legal action against Erie County Sheriff Tim Howard and won.
They say the sheriff was not following the law when he reported inmate deaths to the state. News 4's Erica Brecker has more on this. Erica?
Good evening, Don and Jackie. 2 high-profile inmate deaths come to mind. The death of India Cummings, who many feel needed medical treatment she didn't receive, and the more recent death of Richard Metcalf, who was improperly restrained by deputies. In the case of Metcalf and incidents like suicides, the petitioners in this lawsuit say Howard found workarounds to avoid reporting accurate information to the state. The lawsuit started just before Sheriff Howard was up for re-election around this time last year. 4 people asked the state Supreme Court to compel Sheriff Howard to report serious inmate incidents the way he's supposed to report them to the New York State Commission of Corrections. A year ago, Sheriff Howard said he'd comply with state rules, but then, according to the lawsuit, he did not. As an example, the Commission of Corrections requires suicide attempts be reported as, quote, life-threatening situations, but instead, he categorized some as, quote, manipulative gestures. Nan Haynes, who is one of the 4 petitioners and a former law professor, says it's not okay for the sheriff to decide which laws he will or will not follow.
Now that we have that order, should Sheriff Howard fail to report incidents as he's required to do under the law, he can be held in contempt of court and he can be fined. And if it's egregious enough, he could even be placed in jail.
A county attorney representing Sheriff Howard told the Buffalo News he'll appeal the decision. I was unable to reach him, but Haynes says for now they've won and they will fight any appeal. Earlier this year, the Commission of Corrections actually listed the Erie County Holding Center as one of the 5 worst jails in the state. A spokesperson for Sheriff Howard referred me to the county, and a county spokesperson did not return a call nor an email. Erica Brecker, News 4.
A Lewiston woman is facing charges tonight after authorities say she supplied alcohol to minors. State police say 47-year-old Tricia Vacanti was arrested yesterday. She's now facing 8 counts of child endangerment and unlawfully dealing with a child. She's expected to be back in town of Lewiston court next month.
And on Grand Island today, some of you may have been held up near the bridge because of this accident. Officers say the crash involved several cars, causing major delays on the 190. In fact, at one point, the cars were backed up across more than half of the island. Now, we're still waiting to hear exactly how many people were involved and how it happened, but we do know that several people were injured, but not seriously.
Let's turn now to the forewarned forecast. It has been another windy day across western New York.
Indeed, but the winds could calm down for the evening, we're hoping, and for that, we're going to turn it over to our chief meteorologist, Todd Santos. Todd?
Yeah, the winds will be settling down, finally, after 2 days. And I think today it made it feel even a little bit cooler outside, just dealing with all those wind gusts. I wanted to share at least one of the show. We've been talking a lot about the fall foliage. The one positive out of all of this is that it has helped to remove a lot of the other leaves from the trees. And I say that that's a positive, not because I have some issue with beautiful fall colors. It's that once we start getting into snow season, we don't really want leaves on the trees. And yeah, I said snow season because we're getting into that time of the year. But some beautiful amber colors down here in the gorge looking out toward the Whirlpool Bridge. As far as what we're going to find tonight, temperatures are likely to stay above freezing for a lot of areas up around Buffalo, but we already see some of these 36s, Springville and Olean. I think you're going to bottom out right around 32 degrees overnight tonight. That lake temperature is 1 degree degree below average, and that is going to play into tonight's forecast. As we cool down this air over the lakes, we are going to still see a limited lake response. A few of you have already seen a few limited sprinkles. These are the wind gusts just within the past hour. I do think there's room for not just this wind direction to continue overnight tonight, but for a gust to top off around 30 for at least the next few hours. Once we get past midnight tonight, winds will likely be sustained in the lower teen-mile-per-hour range. I haven't seen very much off Lake Erie so far. We've had a couple very light showers closer toward Lake Ontario. I'll show you this closer in view on the radar, where we have this brief little piece work its way across southeastern Erie and eastern Wyoming, also a few up to the north there over the last 2 hours, mainly in the form of rain. Here the algorithm tries to say it's snow. I mean, you may have seen a flurry there. I don't have any ground truth to that, but I think in general, overnight tonight, we will find a few limited flurries more than anything down in the hills. Still some gusty winds early on, and there's look at our overnight low range. Later in the week, Friday and then into the weekend, we'll see some opportunities for some mixed precip, including snowflakes. We'll have the latest on that coming up. Don, Jackie.
Well, Emerald nursing home facilities are now being run under new oversight. After the turmoil Emerald North and South have seen over the past few years, we're asking, how are things now?
News 4's Al Waters is here to help us answer that question. Al?
Well, Jackie and Don, it's been a little more than a week since the state health department took control of the Emerald South Rehabilitation Center and Emerald North Nursing Home, which they found were not up to the task of properly caring for residents. State officials appointed a New York City-based receiver to take over the operations on Delaware Avenue, and they've already made an impact. At the start, the new operator renamed the Emerald North Nursing Home the Buffalo Community Health Center. An executive team from the receiver, the Grand Healthcare System, has been assessing the two facilities and trying to assure the staff they're trying to improve conditions for the residents and for the employees.
There were policies and procedures that were not in place. There were materials that needed to be gotten that they didn't have access to before that are pivotal to providing appropriate care.
Now, Jay Lawrence told us starting next week there should be visible changes taking place at the two campuses on Delaware Avenue as the new receiver attempts to right the ship that it seems has been adrift for so long. Lawrence points out the executive team has also been meeting with the local officials who actually made the call to the state health department to take over the facilities. Al Waters, News 4 at 6.
Thank you, Al. Still ahead at 6, a shave and a cut for our vets. Details coming up next.